Hello, my friends. My name is Irvin, also known as Kumu Man. What we have here is 70 tech support interview questions and answers. This is a huge video that I've put together based off my previous videos that I made, but also some of the stuff that I've never released before. So what do we have here? We have help desk, we have desktop support, we have system administration, and we have network administration. 70 total interview questions and answers. This is an amazing video for people who are trying to get these jobs. So because it's a combination of videos, some of the questions may be repeated, but that's okay. There are multiple ways of answering same questions, but there won't be many. That being said, please take 1 second to like this video. I really appreciate that. I also have a Discord if you'd like to join. There is a link in the description. Alright guys, let's get into it. Before we proceed, I just wanted to mention that this type of video will be in this specific format, meaning first I will present a question, then provide a written textbook answer, and then afterwards I will provide an explanation to the answer. I hope you enjoyed this type of system, and I wish you best of luck in your job. Question number 1. Can you tell me about yourself? Be very careful when answering this question because this is your first big chance to impress, and you can do so by stating the facts related to this job. Only talk about previous experience, education, and formal training related to this field. It is important to understand that follow-up questions may be related to anything you say at this point. So what I mean by this answer is that you want to talk about anything that relates to desktop support. So let's say you are interviewing for the first time for this type of position. You want to talk about your experience that relates to this job in any way possible. You can talk about hobbies and such, and about yourself on a personal level as well, but as long as you can relate it to this job in some way, this is the most beneficial answer you can give. Question number 2. You've received a trouble ticket that monitor is not working. What is the first thing you should do? A lot of times cables are not plugged in correctly. First, I would check power, then video signal cable, and if both check out, make sure the computer itself is powered on. If interviewer asks for further troubleshooting steps, I explain that there is a possibility that video driver or maybe the monitor itself is simply bad. So what I mean by this answer is that sometimes we have to go down to basics when it comes to resolving issues, and that's exactly what interviewing is trying to figure out when asking this type of question. So of course, there's a chance that cables are loose, which happens. There is a chance that video driver is bad, but that is super rare, but it is something you might want to mention as a last resort. Although most of the time it's either a loose cable or the monitor is simply bad or going bad. Question number 3. What is safe mode? How do you get to it? And what is it used for? In order to reach safe mode, computer must be restarted, and by pressing the F8 key before the operating system loads, you will arrive at a selection screen at which you will scroll up and select Safe Mode. Safe Mode is used to troubleshoot driver issues, hardware issues, and remove viruses or unwanted software. In Windows 10, the combination key is Shift plus Restart. So in this answer, when it comes to older operating systems like Windows XP, Windows 7, you would do it by pressing the F8 key when the operating system is booting. This will get you to a menu at which you can select a few different modes related to safe mode. One of them is safe mode, the other one is, for example, safe mode with networking. However, when it comes to Windows 10, it's a little bit different. While you're within Windows operating system, hold the Shift key and select the restart button. This will put the computer in a maintenance mode, at which point you can navigate to perform a safe mode boot. Question number 4. What is an IP address and how to find it? IP address is a number assigned to your computer to identify its location on a network, meaning that the DHCP server will assign a number to each computer connected to a network as part of identification. You can find your IP address by using a command prompt and type in ipconfig/all. This will display full IP address with a lot more of useful information. Alternatively, you can, within operating system, look at the network adapter properties. So when it comes to this answer, IP address is something that each computer receives as soon as they connect to any type of network, whether it be physically or wirelessly. When it comes to DHCP server, essentially the DHCP server can be a router, a switch, or a dedicated server that assigns these addresses to every computer that connects to this network. Question number 5. What is a default gateway? You can see what the default gateway is by performing an ipconfig/all command through CMD. Default gateway serves as a path to reach other networks. For example, in order to reach the internet outside of your business or home, you need a gateway that will open the way for you. Default gateway in a business environment is typically a proxy server. So when it comes to default gateways is always going to be your switch or a router. And this is when it comes to a simple home network or a simple business network. In a large business environment, it's going to be a proxy server, because proxy server can monitor and filter any traffic that goes outside of your network. Question number 6. What is Active Directory? Active Directory is a feature of Windows Server operating system, and it contains user accounts, objects, host names, group policies, and domain services. For example, Active Directory will have information about user login credentials. In addition, it can contain group policies that will apply different permissions to user accounts that belong to specific groups within same domain. So in the nutshell, Active Directory in a business type of environment has the information about your PC login. So let's say a user goes to a computer, a random computer that's within a business, and tries to log into the computer. Chances are they will be using domain login credentials, which are configured within Active Directory. When it comes to group policies are created so that way, instead of creating special permissions for individual users, user is simply added to the group policy that has these permissions already pre-configured, and it applies it to that specific user. Question number 7. What is a domain? Domain is a group of computers and users created for a network in order to control access. With a domain, you have a group of systems that are bound by the rules of centralized authentication server. In a domain, each system has to connect through the domain server using provided credentials. A computer user will have domain login access once their credentials are created or added to that specific domain within Active Directory. For example, your job's PC login will most likely be a domain login. So let's put this in a simple real-world explanation. If you got a brand new computer that you're trying to connect to the domain, first you have to get a host name from the domain controller itself. Once you get a host name, you would assign that host name to the computer, after which that computer, once added to the network, will have access to the domain resources. Same thing when it comes to adding a brand new user to the domain. So brand new user by default does not have a login or privilege to log into any computers that are controlled by that domain controller. So this is why we have to create a new user credentials within the domain for that specific user, which will allow them to log into the computer. Question number 8. You receive a trouble ticket that states, "My printer is not working properly. It prints out weird pattern on paper. Please assist." This issue is caused by a bad or wrong printer driver. Solution is to acquire and install a correct printer driver. To expand on this question, as you've noticed, specifically points out a weird pattern on paper and not necessarily a faded or broken up patterns when it comes to printing or anything like that. So in this case, it's very clear that ink is not an issue, that there is plenty of ink. So the only thing that can cause this, and you've probably seen this example before, where you send something to print, let's say a document, and it prints it out, but the pattern on it is really weird and it doesn't make any sense. This is a very clear case of a bad or wrong printer driver, after which you have to simply reinstall it. Question number 9. What are some commonly used LAN cables? There are 4 different types of LAN cables commonly used: Cat5, Cat5e, Cat6, and Cat6a. Cat5 speeds are up to 100 megabits per second. Cat5e are up to 1000 megabits per second. Cat6 up to 1000 megabits certified gigabit, and Cat6 up to 10,000 megabits per second. All the speeds are based off 100 meters maximum distance. So the key here is to just remember different types and different type speeds available when it comes to commonly used LAN cables. Not to say that there aren't other LAN cables, there certainly are. There are many different types, but these are some of the most commonly used ones. And what you will most likely see in an older type of business environment is Cat5, which is only up to 100 megabits per second. The newer businesses will most likely have Cat5e, which is up to 1000 megabits per second, which brings it up to the gigabit speeds. So if need be, just kind of make sure you remember all the different speeds, so that way you can answer this properly. Question number 10. What is a blue screen of death? Blue screen of death is most commonly caused by bad hardware. The error appears as a blue screen crashing the computer. Blue screen of death can be caused by hardware, software, or driver issues and conflicts. In order to troubleshoot blue screen of death, you will need to run a full hardware diagnostic on the PC and update all of the drivers. When it comes to blue screen of death, a lot of things can cause this. In my personal experience, hardware has been majority of the time the cause for blue screen of death. This can be caused by bad hard drive, bad video card, bad RAM. Sometimes it can be caused by software or a bad update on a computer, so make sure that everything's updated up to the current, and also can be caused rarely by a virus, so make sure that your antivirus is updated. Question number 11. What is DHCP? DHCP stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, and it deals with handling of IP addresses for all computers connected to a network. Each computer is allowed to have connection to the network or internet resources after the HTTP server assigns an IP address dynamically. Dynamic type of IP addresses can change at any point. So what this means is that as soon as you connect a computer to the network, you take the LAN cable and you plug it into the computer, the DHCP server can see it and says, oh, okay, there's a new computer connected to the network. I'm going to give it an IP address so that I know that it exists, and also let it get basic access to the physical network. In this case, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol assigns it dynamically. So what happens is, if you unplug that computer and take it to somewhere else and plug it in, it will have a different IP address, hence it's assigned dynamically. It changes all the time. Question number 12. What is DNS? DNS stands for Domain Name System, and it reroutes known host names to IP address that hosts its service. For example, DNS for Microsoft.com is located at 104.90.84.14 IP address, but it can be changed randomly. You could say that it serves as an address book for the host names, which are then translated into IP numbers in order for computers to understand it. In this example, it assigns and routes web address names to the web hosting service. If Microsoft.com changes its IP address, that'll be perfectly fine because the domain name system will know that. Of course, you have to have a static IP address for this to work, so you don't want it to change all the time. However, for this web server, you just need to make changes to the settings that point to that IP address. So as soon as you change the IP address, you can go back in and say, okay, Microsoft.com is now at this new IP address, and this is what DNS does. Question number 13. What is VPN? A virtual private network is commonly used as a secure way to connect from remote location to network resources in your business or company. For example, you can take your laptop to a coffee shop, start a VPN or create a VPN, and through it securely connect to a PC at work or access companies' emails and files. So let's say I do go to a coffee shop with my business laptop or work laptop. First thing that I would do once I connect to the Wi-Fi at that coffee shop, I will start a program, most likely, that will create a virtual private network connection between that coffee shop and my workplace. This usually happens with conjunction of a token key. So what would happen is I would launch the software. It would ask me for my credentials plus the token key, which is randomly generated. This creates a safe tunnel connection between 2 points. Question number 14. What is ping command and its use? The ping command is used to determine whether your computer can reach external or internal resources. For example, through command prompt, type ping followed by the name of the websites to test connection. This function sends 4 packets of data which are sent back as acknowledgement of successful connection. It also provides the latency results measured in milliseconds. So in this example, you can use the ping command to test to see if there is a connection between your computer and the website, but it can be also used to test whether you can reach different resources on the same network, for example, another computer over the network. When it comes to testing connection between multiple points, a traceroute command is used instead. Question number 15. What is a group policy? Active Directory assigns a group policy to each new user added into the database. For example, if you work in desktop support, your user login credentials and permissions will be assigned to a group policy. In Active Directory, you can take any user and place them into a group that has predetermined settings. Group policy can restrict read, write, or execute, and restrict access to network resources. So in this example, you can basically just drop a new user into a group that already has predetermined settings. So instead of you having to go in and create a new user by itself and then assign different permissions to it that would either allow, for example, to read, write, execute, or admin privileges, you would simply take that new user and drop him into a group that has predetermined settings. So let's say you do desktop support for this company. Once you do start working for them, all they will do is create a login for you, give you a login ID, and that login ID will be in a group most likely called tech support. Question number 16. What is a PST file? .pst file is a file extension used by Microsoft Outlook archives. An email archive would commonly be known as a PST. Every time a user creates an archive in Microsoft Outlook, it creates a PST file which is stored locally on the computer. So whenever the computer crashes, for example, and the hard drive goes bad, this file is destroyed as well because it is stored locally only. Not to be confused with an OST file, which is basically a cached version of your inbox that is also stored on an Exchange server remotely. Question number 17. How would you change folder permissions? You can change folder permissions through group policy, but it can also be done at local level with administrator privileges. Under Folder Properties, select Security tab and then Edit, after which a pop-up will provide an ability to add users and allow for read, write, execute, or full permissions. This type of thing is typically done with server storage where users are allowed to access certain parts of it. So let's say there is a server within your business that everybody has access to, but they only are allowed to do certain things to the folder and the files within it. This is where you would change folder permissions. Question number 18. What is a difference between a switch and a hub? There are a couple of main differences between switch and a hub. Hub can be used to connect multiple computers to a single network, while switch can be used to create multiple segments of the same network. Second difference is that with a hub, all computers connected share bandwidth, which can create latency issues. Switch can regulate this by only sending data packets to a computer that requested the data and is able to regulate the bandwidth. Interestingly enough, this question can trip up a lot of people. The main thing to kind of keep in mind is that switch is a lot newer technology and it's better at handling a larger amount of computers, whether it comes to switching, data handling, or bandwidth. Question number 19. How would you recover data from a virus-infected computer? In order to successfully and safely recover data, you would extract the hard drive from the infected computer. Afterwards, you would slave it to a second computer that has updated virus definitions, updated Microsoft patches and drivers. From there, you would scan the drive for viruses, and once virus is removed, you can extract the data that needs to be recovered. If at all possible, I would avoid recovering any data, but if it's 100% necessary, then you have to make sure that the slaved drive does not contain any further viruses before you attempt to recover anything. Also, with a slave drive, you're not running the virus in the background whatsoever because you're not using that hard drive as the main operating system that you are currently using. So this is why it's slaved. It's not able to execute anything unless you intentionally go look for the virus on the slave drive and then run it. Otherwise, it's perfectly safe to scan that slaved drive with antivirus software. Question number 20. Why should we hire you? This is your last chance to sell yourself to this employer. Mention all of the qualifications related to this job, all of the work experience, all of the education and certifications that you may have. Don't forget to smile, make eye contact, and confidently explain why all these things would make you a perfect candidate. In addition to this video, I just wanted to mention how it is very important to do your research about the company you're applying with. This will further prepare you and increase your chances in getting this awesome job.
Question number 1, can you tell us about yourself? This question is very important as your first opportunity to sell yourself as the best candidate for this job. You have to make sure that this answer is tailored to the position at hand, meaning only talk about yourself and the relevance to this position. Question number 2, explain the role of Windows Server. Windows OS Server acts as a centralized computer that provides specific functions and predetermined rules for computers, users, and components connected to a network. Question number 3, what is Windows Domain? Windows Domain provides access to user accounts, computers, printers, and security features as part of database controlled by a domain controller. Question number 4, what is a firewall? Firewall is a filter between two or multiple computer resources. It blocks any incoming or outgoing traffic. Firewalls can be in software or hardware forms. Question number 5, what is TCP over IP? TCP is a transmission control protocol that deals with establishing a connection between computers before any data is being sent. In other words, it acts as a highway for data packets being sent back and forth used by various protocols, for example HTTP or FTP. TCP also controls and sorts out the data packets receive order. Friends, instead of showing you an advertisement at this point, please take a moment to like this video or click the subscribe button. This tells me that you appreciate my effort in creating this video. Thank you very much, I appreciate it. Question number 6. Can you explain the difference between HTTP and HTTPS? HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol and is used by majority of websites as means of transmitting website data, and it allows for use of hyperlinks. This protocol mostly uses TCP port 80. HTTPS is a secure version of HTTP that allows for identity verification and low-level encryption using TCP port 443. Question number 7. What is DNS and which port does it use? DNS stands for Domain Name System, and it's mostly used to interpret domain names into numeric IP addresses. For example, domain name cosmicnova.com, its IP address is 130.211.160.109. DNS uses port 53 TCP or UDP. Question number 8. How many queries does a DNS perform and which ones? DNS can perform two types of queries, iterative and recursive. Question number 9. What is Active Directory? A service of Windows Server OS Active Directory used for user and computer authentication within a domain. It can also enforce security policies with use of GPOs, which can also be used to push software installs across the domain. Question number 10. Active Directory database is located where? Database is under the file name ntds.dit and is located in the system root ntds folder of the server. If interested, there is a written version located on my website at cosmicnovo.com. Question number 11. What is a lingering object? If an object is deleted from Active Directory while the main controller is offline, it can create a lingering object. When object is deleted from Active Directory, a tombstone is created, which means that it has to be replicated by the main controller before it expires. Question number 12. What is RAID? Stands for Redundant Array of Independent Disks and is used to provide data redundancy across multiple hard disks. It can also be utilized to improve read and write performance across the server by using striping configuration. For example, RAID 1, 2 or more disks with identical data stored, RAID 0, 2 or more disks data distributed evenly to improve performance. Question number 13. Which commands would you use in CMD to test network connectivity? To test network connectivity, ping, traceroute, or ipconfig commands can be used. Question number 14. What does IntelliMirror do? As part of Windows operating system, IntelliMirror provides assistance in managing user data, computer information, applications, and settings. This is configured with user group policy that defines business roles, group members, and locations. For example, if a user moves to a different computer, the application, settings, and stored files will follow. Question number 15. How do you back up Active Directory? Active Directory can be backed up using NT-Backup tool that comes with 2003 server. With 2008 server, a command prompt is used to perform backup. You would type in WA-admin space start space system state backup dash backup target :E:. You can also perform a full server backup through Server Manager. Question number 16. Do you know what garbage collection is? Garbage collection is a process designed to free space inside of Active Directory. This is performed by default every 12 hours. Question number 17. Do you know what sysvolume folder is? System volume folder is a directory that houses a copy of domain files found on a local drive within domain controller. This data is shared for purpose of replication across domain, for example, user login script and Windows group policy. Question number 18. Explain what group policy is. A group policy is used to control users' desktop computer configurations and permissions by creating a template for specific groups of members. This makes it easy to control and process large groups of users. For example, tech support may have different security permissions compared to a regular computer users. Question number 19. Can you name different types of email servers and ports used? You can have two types of email servers. Incoming mail server, which are POP3 port 110, IMAP 143, and HTTP port 80. You can have outgoing mail server, which is SMTP port 25. Question number 20. What is the difference between forest and a domain? A domain is a logic-based group of computers, users, and devices within Active Directory. A tree is a collection of domains. In case there are multiple trees formed, a forest is created. You're doing great. As you can see, these questions can be easy or hard and can be explained in multiple ways. I am interested to read alternative answers, so feel free to pause the video and share your answer in comments below. All right, we have 20 more to go, so let's do it. Question number 21. Do you know what virtual machine is? Virtual machine is an emulation version of operating system. For example, you can have multiple copies of Windows running on a single computer. Question number 22. Do you know what tattooing the registry means? The group policy will make the changes to users registry, but once the group policy is no longer in effect, Registry values would not revert back, leaving them tattooed in. Question number 23. What is a proxy or proxy server? Proxy deals with filtering network traffic in a sense of preventing access to certain websites, and it can even monitor user web activity. It can block certain websites from being accessed, but it can also act as a measure of hiding the true origin at the point of access. Question number 24. Can you explain what UDP is? UDP stands for User Datagram Protocol. Unlike TCP, UDP is constantly broadcasting a connection signal which can allow for faster connection speeds. With TCP, you have to wait for connection confirmation, which takes time. UDP sends out data without consideration of what is receiving it, sort of like radio signal. Question number 25. What is loopback IP address? The loopback IP address is 127.0.0.1. As part of troubleshooting network connection issues, it is used to test network interface cards for functionality. So if you ping the IP address and it completes it successfully, it means that your hardware is okay. Question number 26. What is DHCP? DHCP stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. The main function of DHCP is to handle distribution of IP addresses on a network. Typically, IP addresses assigned by DHCP servers are dynamic, meaning that they are released and released dynamically, with the exception of static IP addresses. To explain it further, if you connect a PC to a network, it will get a leased IP address, and if you disconnect or move that PC, it will be assigned a new IP address at the new location. Question number 27. What is FTP and port used? FTP is a file transfer protocol used to transfer large files between computers with a built-in ability to pause transfer of data. Ports used by FTP are 20 and 21. Question number 28. What is SSH and port used? Also known as secure shell, is used to establish a secure connection between devices, which can be anything from computers to switches. For example, you can use SSH at a cafe and connect to any device anywhere by establishing a configured secure shell tunnel between two devices, thus making the connection secure. Question number 29. What is maximum length of UTP cable allowed? The maximum length of UTP is 90 to 100 meters for a single segment connection. If you have a switch or repeater, it can compensate for this limitation. Question number 30. What are the layers of OSI model and how many? There are 7 layers of OSI model: physical layer, data link layer, network layer, transport layer, session layer, presentation, and application. Question number 31. What is the job of the network layer? Network layer deals with routing, stitching, and transmitting of data from one point to another, but this layer is also responsible for error handling and packet sequencing. Question number 32. Which types of network cables are used in networking? Cat5 runs at 100 megabits per second maximum. Cat5e can run up to 1 gigabits a second. Cat6 can run up to 10 gigabits a second. Speeds are rated at 100 meters maximum distance. Question number 33. What is a subnet mask? A subnet mask holds the information about the network and hosts addresses under a subnet. In order for TCP/IP protocol to figure out this information, it looks at the 32-bit subnet mask number. Typical example is 255.255.255.0. Question number 34. Can you tell me the difference between a workgroup and a domain? With a workgroup, you can have a collection of systems that are connected to the same network but have their own set of rules and permissions set at the local level. With a domain, you have a group of systems that are bound by the rules of a domain controller. Question number 35. Can you give an example of a DNS issue? If a host cannot be reached by its name over the network, but can be reached using an IP address, indicates a problem with DNS. Question number 36. How would you analyze connection between a local host and a server? A traceRT command is used to accomplish this test. Traceroute can provide detailed path information taken through switches, servers, computers in reaching final destination. Question number 37. What is ipconfig command used for? ipconfig command is used to determine DCP IP settings, DHCP configuration, DNS, default gateway, and subnet mask. It can also be used to change the local DHCP settings, for example, ipconfig /release and /renew. Question number 38. What is VPN? A virtual private network allows users to create a secure connection over public networks such as internet. This is commonly used by mobile workers in order to access companies' network from a remote location. Question number 39. What is a network switch? A network switch is used to create or control a network at physical layer in which multiple devices are connected and share data. This is accomplished by receiving, processing, and forwarding of data in form of data packets. Question number 40. Why should we hire you? Just as important as the very first question on the list, this is your last chance to tell this employer why you are the best choice for this position. You should talk about your experience and how you could use that to benefit the company.
Question number 1. When using a remote desktop, you come to realize that the remote computer is not reachable by using a hostname. What would be the troubleshooting steps to take in order to resolve this issue? Keep in mind that the remote computer is turned on and on the same physical network. First, I would check to see if the remote computer's hostname is part of the same domain. Also would check to see if the remote computer is enabled within domain if it has been added. Second, I would try to ping the computer by using the hostname. If an error comes up, it would determine my next step. For example, if message is cannot resolve hostname, I would try pinging the computer using its IP address. Third, I would check for possible DNS issues if computer is reachable with IP address. If using IP address, I can connect to the remote computer or use remote desktop session, it could indicate a replication issue of the DNS server. Lastly, if I have physical access to the computer, I would check the DHCP settings or look at possible hardware issues or LAN connection issues. However, this is unlikely if computer is reachable by IP address or if it has been part of the network for some time. Question number 2. A user has transferred to another department within company, and their local profile is missing many files and desktop icons. What do you think the issue could be? First, I would ask the users if they move to another computer, which could mean that their files are stored at another machine. It could also mean that the new computer does not have the same software installed and icons for those would not be present. Second, if user has not moved to another machine, I would check the Active Directory if any GPO or domain profile restrictions for user's new department are affecting the ability to create, view, or edit files, which could also be the reason for not seeing certain desktop icons. Third, user may have received a new domain login ID which inherently does not have access to previously used local profile which has the old login ID attached to it. Lastly, if any of the situations described apply, I would act accordingly to resolve the issue. If users' files are located somewhere else, and if permitted by the company's policy, I would transfer them back to user. Same goes for any software that is missing. Question number 3. Your office receives a new printer, and now it needs to be configured for everyday use by a specific department in your building. How would you go about installing this printer in direct IP printing setup? First, I would unpack the printer and make sure that it has all parts and cables. Then I would connect and plug in the printer into power and network port available at designated location. Second, I would make sure that this new printer has a static IP address assigned to it and acquire a driver package for a specific model of the printer, unless the printer is set up to push the driver automatically and upon request. Typically, printer would push the driver. Third, Active Directory needs to know of the printer added to the domain, and this can be done by assigning a printer hostname and adjusting GPO settings that allows the users of that department to use that printer. If driver has to be pushed separately, this can be configured as well. Lastly, I would notify the users of the new printer and its IP address and assist accordingly. Question number 4. What is the best way to install OS on 100 computers manually, meaning you don't have an option to boot over the network or any automated systems available? First, I would make sure that all computers are connected to the network and turned on. Of course, if these are new computers and I have an option to image them before deploying, I would try to keep them in the same area for easy access. Second, I would acquire host names for each machine so they can be added to domain. This can be assigned through Active Directory. Third, because booting over the network does not work, I would create multiple OS install media to use, for example CD or USBs. Afterwards, I would manually boot to inserted media and execute OS imaging process. Lastly, upon image completion, I would ensure that each computer has a hostname attached and is added to domain or workgroup. In addition, I would install any software required per department, templates, or requests. Let's just pause for a few seconds here. As you may have noticed, all of these questions require you to explain your way of doing things. I also have top 20 desktop support questions and answers that talk about specific technical aspects of the interview. Link in the video description below. Question number 5. From a desktop support point of view, how would you deal with user migration to a new domain? How would you deal with users affected by this change? First, I would make sure that users and their management is aware that this change is coming and how it will affect them. Second, I would choose a few machines to be converted ahead of time for testing purposes. This can be communicated with the network team. Third, I would reach out to department managers to coordinate the switch so that the production impact is minimized. This would involve application and website access testing on the new domain before converting everyone else. Lastly, once all testing on a new domain is successful, a green light would be given to convert all other host machines to the new domain. Question number 6. The entire building is switching over to the gigabit network and you are to assist with this process. How would you handle this project? First, I would work with the network team to decide on the new IP network ranges and make sure that certain machines receive static IP addresses. Second, if any network cables need to be upgraded, it would be coordinated with members of desktop support and the network team. For example, Cat5e is a minimum cable rating for gigabit speeds. Third, if any changes affect printers and other static devices such as servers, this has to be communicated to users and make appropriate changes to each machine. Lastly, the most important thing would be the testing part before deployment, because there is a chance that certain applications require firewall exceptions for their IP or our range of IP addresses. Question number 7. One day you come into work and find that major systems are down. However, you also see that ticketing system has 50 plus unassigned or unworked tickets. How would you prioritize and how would you go about dealing with both problems? First, I would ask which systems are down and how many users are impacted. This will determine which issue to work on first. Tickets would be the last priority. Second, if multiple system issues are related, then I would handle this issue on my own if possible. If issues are not related, in that case, I would recruit help from coworkers and possibly assign individually if manager is not present. Third, I would proceed to troubleshoot the issue and get as much information as possible before reaching out to any other support groups that manage specific aspects of systems affected. In this case, support team is essential to resolve major issues that are not at immediate access to myself or desktop support team. Lastly, once issues with major systems are resolved and the bulk of users are back to work, then I would concentrate on resolving tickets unassigned. Of course, it goes without saying that during crisis issue, all of the management would be notified of progress and solution, and lastly, the root cause. Question number 8. Explain a situation in which you had to deal with difficult problem and how you went about resolving it. First, an example in which I had difficulty resolving happened all the time, and this is due to not having immediate access to systems involved. Anytime I had to deal with a server, network, or website issue that I don't have access to, I would have to involve other groups or members of IT team to assist. Second, a more specific example would be a web-based systems application stopped functioning, which affected 500 plus users, and since I don't have access to the application server, the support team for that application was immediately contacted because the issue was affecting multiple users, which means the issue is not local due to that fact. Of course, the first thing I would look at is the error information that would provide clues to what the issue may be. Third, I would gather all information related to the system outage, which would typically include number of users, specific errors, example computer IP addresses affected, time the issue occurred, and also test to see if issue persists using alternative methods. To make sure that this issue is resolved as fast as possible, this information is crucial. Upon having this information available, appropriate support teams would be contacted. Lastly, I would work with the support team and users affected to help resolve the issue by providing feedback and testing as required. In the meantime, it is also important that management is aware of the situation and receives regular updates on the matter. This includes IT and users management. Questions 9 and 10. Friends, I'm leaving the last 2 questions open-ended for a really good reason. This is my way of providing an opportunity for everyone else to spare a few moments and contribute to my cause, which is to learn from each other. What would your questions be for 9 and 10? Well, there you have it, guys. I hope this helps you get that job. It's important to know all of these questions, and I'm sure you guys know a lot of these answers as well. But the thing is, though, this video will give you the confidence knowing that you know this stuff. And that's incredibly important. Yeah, there are definitely some of the questions that are kind of hard, that they can stump you, like, tell me about yourself, why should we hire you, and all that stuff. So it's good to keep these things in mind. So when you go for an interview, you'll have an idea of what to tell them, which should help you relax a lot more and increase your chances that much more in getting that job. All right, thank you so much for liking, sharing, and subscribing. All right, I'll see you next time. Good luck to you. Take care.